Welcome to the Sharpe Way. I'm Larry Sharpe. I'm so glad you decided to join me this Monday evening. If you want to join the program tonight, it is 573-427-5463. Why do I push that tonight? Because tonight it is just you and I, you and me together having a difficult or interesting or special conversation about poverty. Poverty is an issue we have to talk about, and I want to make sure we have a good conversation this evening, talk about some actual ways of solving poverty and dealing with poverty, not having a war on poverty, doing something that actually works with not just people in inner cities, but also people in rural areas, suburban areas, a mindset change, and a way that we can actually solve or at least make this problem less of a problem. If you want to support the program, please go over to patreon.com/Sharpe Way. You can do that. And if you like what I'm saying, support me. Go ahead, do that. Do $9, $48, or even more if you can, because guess what? I'm giving you good content. We're having good conversations, and I want us to have that. Now, what is it about poverty? What actually makes people, groups of people, communities poor? It's one important piece that goes through everything, and is the concept of ownership. Ownership in your property, ownership in your business, ownership in your job, ownership in your life, ownership in your culture, ownership in every aspect, right? Ownership is the key. Why does that matter? All right. I'll touch one of all those right now, and that's housing. Look at how people very often don't own their own homes. How many times do we have a renter's environment where people are only about how much money can I pay in rent every month? How much money can I pay in rent? And that's all I care about. And I got to pay the rent. And it's scrambling every single month to give somebody else your hard-earned money, and you gain nothing in return. People get upset all the time about things like gentrification. And of course, you're a renter. Of course. And right now, our culture is just getting worse with that. More and more people are going into a month-by-month idea of renting everything. Rent a center, renting furniture, renting TVs, renting games. Everything is a monthly piece where we do everything monthly. And now we have monthly ideas for our housing. How in the world can I pass down my wealth? How can I pass down equity? How can I pass down the fruits of my labor when I can't even pass that down to my children or my cousin or my uncle or my brother or whomever I want to give the fruits of my labor to? But not just that. No one else sees that. If I've got generation upon generation of people who just got to figure out how to pay the rent, that's what I think is the norm. Why would I even strive for anything else? Now, of course, we tried to do that by, giving cheap mortgages to people, right? That was one of our ways of doing that. And of course, the crash came, and who got hurt the worst? The poor. They got smashed the worst because we tried to force it. I don't want to force it. I know libertarian doesn't want to use force. I don't want to use force. Now, I want to go to some place that we could deal with both inner city and rural. Rural is the horrible trailer parks, where trailer people are buying trailers and renting this space. And oh my God, what a horrible way to make this happen. Why aren't we creating environments to where we can get people to, rent to own? When we have public housing here in New York City, it's a massive problem in public housing. We literally have rats and mercury and all kind of problems and all kind of issues we have in our public housing. Why in the world aren't we giving the people in public housing the opportunity to purchase their own home? Larry, I'm going to give some poor guy some chance to buy something, and it's that or pay their rent in perpetuity. Which would you prefer? I don't want to pay their rent in perpetuity. So how about instead we give them an opportunity to take the money they're bringing in and to buy their own apartment? How about that? Their own apartment. Why? Because guess what? When they buy their own apartments, some of them will, some of them won't. Remember, every time you implement some new idea, most people don't take advantage of it. They go, that's good for those guys, not for me. Well, someone's going to do it. Great. As they begin to do it, all of a sudden what happens? Well, guess what? They begin to have ownership. They care whether there's a leak. They care whether there's lead paint. How do we know that? It's already happened. They did this in London, and it had some pretty good results. But not just that. Now you have the idea that someone who was a renter now becomes a landlord or an owner or can give it or sell it or rent it or whatever the case may be. Well, now when gentrification comes that we're all mad about, is that person mad? Of course not. Their property value went up. That person's happy. Great. Bring them in. But not just that. That person controls gentrification. Who are they selling to? Are they deciding to sell or not? Are they retaining? Are they renting? What are they doing? Now you're showing a community about ownership. Something as little as simply allowing someone who's in a trailer park and encouraging that person who owns a trailer park to do some rent to owner. Just that. Just in an inner city. Allowing people who live in public housing the opportunity to begin to purchase their own homes or their own apartments. Just that opportunity. Again, most won't take it, but some will. And when they do, you will find all of a sudden now things begin to change. That culture, that idea of ownership will begin to change. That's not a 5-minute solution, but we've been fighting our war on poverty, 60 years now? More? 60, 70 years maybe? How long have we been fighting a war on poverty? At least 60 years. It hasn't worked. Give my ideas half of that, 30 years. Give my ideas 15 years, one quarter of that time. Give my ideas that. And watch the difference we'll have if we only did that. I want to grab a call. As I said, I'm concerned, obviously, about you guys giving us your opinion on this. So I want to grab, if I could, I want to grab Reggie from New York. If I can grab Reggie. Reggie, my friend, are you there? Reggie there?
Yeah.
Reggie, what's going on, my friend?
Oh, not a whole lot. I commented on your live stream here last week, and you told me to call in this week.
Oh, perfect. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, what are you going to do for agriculture in, New York?
Yes.
Both dairy and non-dairy.
100%. And it's funny, this is actually a good time to call because I'm talking about poverty. And when it comes to upstate New York particularly, you have a lot of poor farmers. It's true. A lot of farmers who are struggling. As you know, I'm sure because you're calling, you probably know, New York State's an old state, and there are lots of farms that have been in someone's family for 5 or 6 generations, and we're having problems.
Right.
So yeah, I'm going to talk. Let me deal with 2 different pieces of it, and you brought it up perfectly. This is perfect, Reggie. One of them is dairy. One of them is non-dairy, and of course, no one except for me even had a plan for farmers at all. The number one thing, whether dairy or not, is New York State must treat small farmers like small businesses in every way because they actually are. What does that mean for a small farmer? Number one, cheaper insurance, because right now farmers pay like industrial rates when they should be paying regular commercial rates. So treat them like a small business, just if nothing else, for insurance, for liability, for workers' compensation, for everything. Just right then and there, that is going to help. That's nowhere near enough. But just that is one piece. Let me keep going. Not just in that regard, but also for zoning, right? Now, a farmer now who decides he wants to build out something, he wants to create a wholesale facility on his farm, or he wants to create a retail facility on his farm, or he wants to create a manufacturing plant in his farm. If you know farmers, it costs you X $1,000 to change this, Y thousands of dollars to change that, a lawyer for this, a lawyer for that. You're dropping tens of thousands of dollars to basically build a shack on your own property. So, no, it's a business. And if the business wants to grow, the business should be able to grow. But I'm still not done. I also want to treat them like small businesses when it comes to loans. As you know, a farmer very rarely can actually get a decent loan. They have to get loans against their equity, against their farm, and they wind up getting deeper in debt. Sadly, as you know, there is a rash of suicides. Farmers who've realized the only answer is the shotgun in the mouth. And I don't want that to be their answer. But instead, give them a small business loan. Treat them like businesses, and it's a different kind of loan. It's a loan that hopes that you actually are successful and will assist you in growing your business. But I'm still not done. When it comes to non-dairy farmers, why in the world are we not legalizing all forms of cannabis and hemp? Allowing for literally a cash crop. Not what we're trying to do now in New York State, which is allowing big business and cronies and licensing. If If you remember from my campaign, I talked often about the idea of regulating cannabis like onions. And I meant that. Someone said onions are actually too regulated. I should go to carrots. I'm fine. I'll take onions. I don't mind. Onions, carrots. You pick the vegetable. I'm in. But regulate them like a vegetable with one exception, and that is you must be 18 years or older to purchase at retail. That's it. Otherwise, allow people who think that cash crops are right for them to create cash crops. When you combine that with treating them like a small business, you will watch all of a sudden small farmers, some of them will decide to then create craft grows, craft products for cannabis, hempcrete, hemp plastic, cannabis for pain, insert thing here. How do I know this? Because it's happening in New York State with wines, wineries, and breweries. It's already happening. We have craft brews everywhere, right? So you then create that aspect. But guess what? I'm still not done. Now, when it comes to dairy farmers, why aren't we allowing the dairy farmers to do the same thing? If all of a sudden they can begin to have craft grows too, craft cheeses, craft ice creams. If we treat them like small businesses, then all of a sudden some of them will be able to do that. And let's say only 10% of dairy farmers do that. 90% don't. No worries. If 10% decide to do that, then what will happen is there'll be less milk on the market, which means the price will go up for the other dairy farmers by default. I want dairy farmers to stop being price takers and start being price makers. We should have done that. But now here's the biggest overall thing we can do. And this is based out of Wyoming. And everything I'm talking about has been done in some way, shape, or form. Wyoming has a law right now where if you decide to sell, you agree to sell your products only within Wyoming, you are immune from all federal regulatory bodies. We should copy that here in New York State for all farmers. If you want to sell your craft grow or your craft dairy product only in New York State, then you are immune from all federal regulatory bodies, which also means you can sell raw milk if you want to, right? As long as you have a stamp on it saying, you know what? No, I do not follow federal guidelines. No worries. If someone cares about federal guidelines, they're not going to buy your product. If someone doesn't care, you can buy the product. You'll buy it locally. It will help local farmers to sell to local businesses. It will help people to show up. And more importantly, when you actually have a system to where the farm can create not just farming, but also a marketing arm and also a manufacturing arm and also a wholesale arm, all those different ideas, you'll get people, meaning family members, to stay on the farm. Right now, it doesn't happen. If you have 3 kids, 4 kids, 3 are going to leave. You only have 1 kid's going to stay. Only 1 wants to farm. The other 3 don't want to farm. But now there's a manufacturing plant and or wholesaling plant and or retailing plant. Well, the person may not like farming, but man, they like marketing or they like operations. They like something. And boom, you begin to keep your family back on your farm. And you can survive as a small business owner. Again, how do I know that? Look at breweries. Look at wineries. That's what's happening. The same thing would happen with the farmers. If you did all of those things, you would watch a massive improvement in the small farmer here, because the big farmers by default sell outside of New York State. They will have to fall into guidelines. They've already spent the money in all the improvements. So it actually would give the small farmer a better chance to survive locally. And if I'm the governor, I'm going to talk about this all the time, which will have a culture of people in New York State saying, I want to buy from small farmers. And you will see New Yorkers feel like it's a good thing to buy from small farmers, again, increasing the odds of a small farmer to grow. Now, if that farmer decides in the future, 2-3 years, they want to become one of the big boys, they can. But then they will have time to make that shift to follow all the federal guidelines. And they may decide not to, or they may decide to. It's not my place to decide how big your farm gets. I just want to make sure that you can survive on your farm and we don't lose all of our farmers. Did I answer your question?
That did answer my question. I just got one quick thing to add to that.
Take your time.
Governor Cuomo just passed a law saying in January, these farms are going to have to pay their employees time and a half. I'm kind of curious as to where your thoughts are. Where do you think that's going to go? Because a lot of these farms, I see farms every day. I live in the middle of nowhere. They're closing up.
Yes.
And everybody's moving out. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, the big farms can afford it for a little while, but where do you think it's going to put us as far as long term?
This is a great question, right? This is a great issue. And what people don't realize, and it's actually one of the things that Andrew Yang is talking about. He's talking about automation, right? And how automation and AI is taking over jobs. And he's talking like almost that's the push. Technology isn't making this push. Big business is. Because big business sees what things like His Majesty King Andrew II is doing. He is saying you have to pay this, you have to pay that. And you're right, big business says fine, because big business's answer is automation, right? So they then automate all these jobs away. The small farmer can't afford that. This push towards what His Majesty is trying to achieve is just going to crush small farmers even more. And no one seems to care. And the problem is that Cuomo doesn't care because the people who are leaving, most farmers, don't vote for him already. So he's just losing more of the people who don't vote for him. So what's his downside? Now, as horrible as that sounds, sadly, it's totally fine for him. Politically, it's actually the right move because it makes people who are in cities who often hate big business to say, yeah, get them, Cuomo. You're getting those evil business owners, those evil farmers who are all trying to make big money, right? And hurt chickens and everything else that they've been told and they believe. And they don't realize that all they're actually doing is ensuring that you get bigger agriculture and bigger agro companies and bigger corporate farms. That's what you're actually doing, which are actually more automated and lose more jobs. That the actual consequences of this is fewer jobs and a bigger black market. Because you hang around farmers, you know something else that I know when I was up there running around. I still go up there and run around all the time in state New York, is that there's a bunch of people who are purposefully grabbing workers off the black market and doing things, under the table, off the books. Why? They have to survive. That's what's happening already. So these laws will simply increase the black market. They will increase automation. They will speed the loss of jobs, and they will speed the loss of small business.
Okay, all right. I see where you're getting with that, and like the whole automation thing. I understand that. I'm kind of familiar with some of the automation that got incorporated into farming, but a lot of these big farms are finding out this automation thing's not working.
Yeah,
I mean, they can't go out and they can't afford to buy a $500,000 robot and put in their barn to milk cows for 6 months and then have to close their doors. I mean,
yes, I think you're right, and I don't think the governor cares at all. I think he had, and before, I don't think the Republican Party cares either. Neither of them had any answer for farmers. None. I was the only one who had answers for farmers, and no one else did. So I think you're correct. But what it means is you will now have to have investors, right? And I guess this is the last piece that I should bring up, which you actually helped me out to give this last piece. If you start having cash crops like Kraft grows and Kraft Dairy, what you'll get is not banks. You'll get investors. You'll get people who want to invest in you, and your success is their success. So what's going to happen? Because your point's a valid one. How does some farm, get $500,000 to start milking cows, with a machine? An investor. That's how he does it, right? Some guy says, yeah, I got $500,000 for you. Here you go. I want 10% of your farm, and let's do some Kraft stuff. And they go, okay, that's how they do it. If you're a small farm, you don't get that investor. Only the big farm gets the investor.
Right.
So it's just going to ensure more massive farms, more of an oligarchy in the agricultural business. That's what it's going to do. We aren't going to stop farming. That's not going to happen. We're not going to stop farming. What's going to happen is, 3 companies are going to own everything. 2 companies will own everything. That's how it's actually going to work. And then once they're that big, they just decide on what the pricing is because they're too big.
Right. Exactly.
Was that helpful?
That was very helpful, and I appreciate your time, and you totally have my vote.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Hey, you too.
So yeah, when I'm talking about these issues, this is a big deal, right? Farmers are struggling too. Another form of poverty that shouldn't be, right? You shouldn't have to have a farm, and then when you have a farm, that becomes your part-time job because you have to work someplace else to work your farm. That's now how it should be, and we can do something to make that better. I want to grab another call if I could. Another person from New York. I got the New York stuff tonight. This is Clayton from upstate New York. Clayton, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Talk to me, my friend.
Alrighty. So one of the things I was wondering is, what do you plan on doing for small businesses?
Oh my God. So much.
I know you just talked about the farming, but
Yes. No, so much. Let me bounce off the farming piece as one, and then I'll go to the next piece, which is important also. This goes to the poverty issue. It's perfect timing. First thing, one, I want to copy that same law that the farmers have for if you sell locally only in New York State, that you're immune from all federal regulatory bodies. I want to copy that also in New York State for all small businesses. Now, of course, the issue, of course, here becomes if you do sell an internet business, if you have internet business or you sell across the border, that won't affect you. But if you decide to sell locally, like you're a local bar, you're a local shop, you're a local retail place, you know what? That will help. And local retailers are getting hammered by the big box retailers. So instead, this will help that local business. But as I said, for the farmers, that's not enough, but that's good. The second thing is we have to get rid of New York State's insurance board. New York State is the only state that actually has an insurance board. Many people don't know that, right? All the other states, they just use federal guidelines. That insurance board has to show that it's valuable. So what does it do? It literally has become predatory. It hunts businesses. You will find if you ever go to a state fair or something like that, you'll find people who will get a booth at a state fair, some local business, right? Bob's this, Jane's that, whatever, local booth. And in that booth will either be someone who is so obviously just a day laborer hirer, right? Some person that you have there to hold the spot who knows nothing about your business, or the owner's there. Nobody else is there. That's it. So I was asking, why are you the owner of this business here? And I asked more than one person, and they said the same thing. Because the New York State Insurance Board actually travels throughout these things looking for employees so they can start punishing the small businesses. That's how predatory they are. I'm a business consultant. So when a small business owner decides to start, hiring people, I go, great, now your punishment begins. Because the second you start hiring, if you've ever hired anybody, the first thing that happens is you automatically start getting bills from workers' compensation on how evil you are and how much money you owe them. And it's massive amounts. They immediately just assume you're guilty. You don't have to get your accountant and hope that he's savvy enough to push back and go, stop. That's not how it's working. So when that happens, things get tough and they get even harder. But now it gets even worse. Because now, in New York State specifically, they are going out of their way to change the definition of employee. As business owners now small business don't want to employ people because they get hammered, they now start getting contractors or the gig economy. So now New York State, instead of making it easier to hire employees, have decided to change the definition of what an employee is. So now if you're a small business, literally if you have somebody talk to you, I talk to the guy 3 times a week. That's an employee. Punishment begins. And that's how it works. And the punishment begins. They're hammering. So I would end the insurance board period so it's not predatory, number one. I would also get rid of the idea of workers' comp that we have right now in New York State. We're one of the, I think it's only 7 states that force you to buy 2 forms of workers' comp. In New York State, you have to have workers' comp for a fall that happens or a problem accident that happens on the job and also off the job. That's New York State law. So I decide to be an idiot in my backyard and have an accident. You're paying. That's insane to me, but that's how that works. And that practice also. But I keep going. I'm still not done. Why in the hell do we have so many licenses for everything, right? The example I bring up, and this affects poverty specifically, and that is licensing for things that don't require a license. The small business owner now who decides he or she wants to start a dog walking business, they need a license for that now. You want to braid hair, you need a license. Why? Why in the world would you need a license for these types of things? Why? It's a money grab from New York State, which allows businesses to get hammered, which makes sure one thing happens. The small business owner gets hammered. And I just talked earlier from the farm guy talking about the have to pay people time and a half. You start having minimum wage laws, the same thing happens, right? The small business owner gets hammered and the non-small business owner does not get hammered. If you saw what I did when I was running my campaign, I literally went to only local businesses. That's all I did. Local business. All my stuff was on local businesses. What happens? Because they're the ones who are getting hammered. They're getting hammered because everyone's going to either big box or to the franchise model. Now, I'm not against franchise. I think franchises are amazing. They're great for many people, particularly for vets and people like that. They're wonderful for that. people who require some structure but still want to be entrepreneurial. They're wonderful, great to have franchises. The problem is they are super, they're super powerful in New York State because there's so many regulations that only they can handle that. When you get a franchise, you're basically having them handle the government for you. And for most people, that's the savviest thing. So you do all those things and you will find things will begin to change in New York State. We've got to have a pro-small business attitude. Right now, what our answer has been in most states, but New York State's terrible at this, is bribing big business to come in. Big business comes in, the bribes go away, big business goes away, ghost town. That's how it's been working in New York State for literally decades. So when you start doing those things, you will find small business owners who become better and faster and stronger and will stay in New York. Sadly, about 2 weeks ago, I was emceeing a government blockchain association event in D.C., and people there who were not in D.C. were literally saying, we got to talk about the business attrition in New York State. And I got mad. I got mad because, I talked about this last week, I got angry because they're not New Yorkers, and they're talking about my state, how bad it is, right? They don't get to do that. I get to call my brother dumb, not you, right? You can't go, I can do it, you can't, right? It's my state. I can talk bad about it, but I don't want you doing it. So I actually got upset about it, but I get it. It's a big problem. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that answers your question. Did it?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for the call, my friend. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Hey, I had one other question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as grants for small businesses, what do you intend to do on that? Because I'm a small business owner myself, obviously, and I tried applying for a few different grants to not so much compete with big business, but just to kind of get my ball rolling. The issue I struggle with, and
I get it
the
completely.
issue
I am not a fan of grants at all. And the reason why I'm not a fan of grants is grants wind up going to cronies. Grants go to people who know how to scam the system. I'm not a big fan of grants. I want to instead make it easier and cheaper for you to start a business so you don't require a grant. I have an idea. How about this? How about we create a rule in New York State that says if you hire someone who is a felon, as an example, that you will pay no state payroll tax for 2 years. How about that? Just put a felon on your payroll, no payroll tax for 2 years. How about that? Oh my God! All of a sudden, you have a new group of people to come on in, people who you know, to give them a chance. How about that? How about we focus in the next 4 years in getting rid of our state income tax? We should get every single person in New York State a raise without charging that business owner anything whatsoever. How about I make it? Yes. How about I make it easier for you? If I support grants, I'm supporting the government handing stuff to you when the government deems it to be correct. I don't want the government to deem it to be correct. I want you, who knows your community, who knows your world, to decide what makes sense in your world, and then boom, to open that business as you see fit.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm winning. Look at that. Thank you. I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you for calling.
Well, like the last caller said, you definitely have my vote.
Oh, there we go. That's 2. Just need about 2 million more, and I'm set. All right. Rock and roll, and slowly but surely. But let me move forward on this same idea of businesses, right? Ownership of businesses is also critical. If any of you happen to see that Netflix special that Killer Mike did, I forgot the name of the special, but it was a Netflix special that Killer Mike did. And he talked about one idea of trying to use only black businesses in one given day. And he couldn't do it. There were so few black-owned businesses in his area, and this is Georgia, that he literally had to sleep on a bench or something like that because he couldn't find enough businesses that were black-owned. He had trouble finding places to eat. We need to be able to encourage people who are poor culturally, wherever that culture is. Again, whether that's the barrio, whether that's, the hood, whether that's the trailer park, doesn't matter where it is, anywhere to farming, anywhere it is, to start thinking about ownership of their own businesses. You hear me talk about farmers. Think of it like a business, not like just your land. Think of your farm like a business and act accordingly. When I was a poor kid in the Bronx, most of you know I grew up in the South Bronx as a kid. People used to get out and they'd be braiding hair on the sidewalk, on the stoop, making money. My poor neighborhood cabs didn't come to my neighborhood back then. We didn't have Uber. We had gypsy cabs that would show up, people who would drive people around. We had guys who would bang out dents in the cars in the front of our homes. These are all entrepreneurial ways of making money. If you look at any brown, black, immigrant community, any poor community, period, there's an entrepreneurial spirit that's being snuffed out by licensing $20,000 to braid hair, right? Medallions in New York City for driving a cab that is nothing but an attack on immigrant communities and crushes immigrant families. That's all that does, right? The war on drugs literally is the entrepreneurs who have no other way of making money, so they do it. So they do a drug trade. That's why they do it. And how do I know that? Literally, there's actually a charity. I think they're still around. I believe they're called Defy, if I remember right. I may be off on that, but I think it's called Defy. They're a charity that literally their job is to find people who've been convicted of drug problems, of drug issues, drug dealing, and to now give them the backing of MBAs and the backing of bankers to start businesses. These are business people, just they are violent. So take away the violence, you've got a business owner. They know how to do distribution. They know how to run a team. They know all these things. This entrepreneurial spirit is being crushed. You want to get people to not be poor. Have them own their housing. Have them own their businesses. Look at the franchise models in many poor neighborhoods. The guy or gal who actually owns the Subway, or who owns the Minuteman Press, or who owns the insert thing here, very often that person doesn't live in that community, because the most common person who gets a franchise is someone who already owns a franchise. So that guy or gal might own a gas station 3 or 4, towns over, and they give them the gas station now that's in your town. They now own the local Shell or whatever it is, the franchise that happens. I don't blame the franchise company. I don't blame them. That's a smart move for them, right? I get it. But we can't have the entire world just being like that. We can't have our entire communities being done like that, to where the best you can do in any given small town is being a manager of a franchise. If that's as far as you can go, of course you never think about owning your own business. Of course you don't. If you don't see people like you owning businesses, of course you don't think you can. I mean, if you're a business owner now, imagine if you had never seen someone who owned a business in your family, friends, how hard that would be. It was hard for me. I didn't have it in my home. It's hard for me too. That's why I'm a late bloomer. See, that's the reason why. So I completely agree. Owning your own business, changing licensing, instead, changing it into certifications. So you want a license to braid hair? Make it a certification to braid hair. And you have to put on your door when you come in, I have the certification to braid hair from New York State, or I don't. And then the consumer decides, do I care or not? If the consumer only wants a New York State licensed hair braider, then they will go there. If they don't, then they won't. The consumer decides. It is consumer driven. And that's what I want for a licensing. As a general rule, here's what's about the campaign. I still believe it. Would you ask your friend to do it? If you'd ask your friend to do it, why is there a license? Would you ask your friend to walk your dog? Sure you would. So why is there a license? Right? You want to have a certification? Fine if you want to, but no need. Right? Would you ask your friend to braid your hair? Well, not mine. But in theory, yeah, sure not. Braid their hair. Whatever. Go ahead. No worries. Do it. Somehow we're braiding hair all day long and no one's dying. Right? And I hear this all the time. Larry, you have to, because when you're shaving your hair, there could be blood and we could all get infected and die. You can go to Walmart right now and buy a pair of shearers if you want to, right? Clippers. And you can cut hair. Moms and dads are cutting their kids' hair every day in this country, right? When I was in the Marine Corps, every weekend there'd be some guy in the bathroom, we call it the head in the big shower with a chair, shaving people's heads and giving haircuts for a couple bucks, right? Every weekend. I'm sure it still happens. So every day, every weekend, millions of people are cutting hair. Where are all the deaths from hair cutting? It's a fantasy. It's not happening. It's not happening at all. It's a fantasy. So if you care, only go to a certified barber or a certified hair braider. If you don't go. Let the consumers decide what's happening here. Giving the small business owner, giving the poor guy who wants to get up and make something happen, let him happen. You know, the person who starts a babysitting business, or the person who starts a dog walking business, what are they, a millionaire? Are they trying to, it's big babysitting? Stop. It's just someone who probably is having trouble and trying to get their life back in order. That's what they're trying to achieve. Let's let them do that. Let's give someone a second chance. So I know I kind of went all about the, businesses. I know I did, but it's a passion of mine. So anyway, look, do you like what I'm saying? Does it make sense to you? If it makes sense, I love it. That's awesome. If you like what I'm saying, if you like having access and talking to me about this stuff, awesome. Then support this show. Support this show. Head on over to patreon.com/sharpeway and do me a favor. Give me a monthly support. $9, $48. If you've got it, $98. Do what you can to put some cash here because this costs money and time. So help me out. Let's keep moving forward. Support this. Right? You see, I'm doing this every single week, bringing cool stuff, bringing these ideas out, and I'm not done. So support me. But say you don't like that, it's no worries. You can get this cool shirt there too at sharpeway.com or this very super cool mug. Yes, you can. You can get that with a monthly donation or monthly subscription, or you can have it at sharpeway.com and click on the swag button, pick it up there. All right. I want to grab a couple more calls. I'm falling behind on calls. If I could, I think I want to talk probably to Brian. I think Brian is going to be a good guy I'm going to talk to. I'm going to call Brian. He's also in New York. A lot of New Yorkers today. He wants to talk about unregulated markets. And that, boy, does that sound dangerous. Brian, how are you, my friend?
Good.
Talk to me. This is Larry.
What?
I said talk to me. This is Larry. How are you?
Sorry. Okay. Hey, Larry. First off, sorry to hear about the governor failure. I mean, I'm a Republican, but honestly, you Libertarian guys are a better option compared to Cuomo and that I can't remember his name. We call him Rhino in our parts of Republican country.
It was bad. I know. Absolutely, it was bad. So thank you for your condolences, but we did well. I mean, I'm happy that we have ballot access. I'm happy that we're moving forward. I appreciate that.
Okay. What I want to talk to you guys about is generally medieval Europe and if my understanding of history is correct, Charlemagne introduced this idea which seemed reasonable at the time. Feudalism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't really end well, especially when you have people who were like obligated to work, and as Adam Smith put it, obligating someone to work would not lead to much change or progress. And then you got the European Jews who were ostracized, so they had to form their own communities.
I'm not sure where you're going with this, my friend. Where are you going with this? Talk to me. What do you have a question or a comment with this?
Yes. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that European feudalists had a very regulated market system, and the Jewish communities had a fairly unregulated market. So, and the Jews actually ended up doing better than the European.
Yes,
guys.
This is brilliant. I like this very much. Yes, thank you for bringing this up. The concept of you're saying that now when you go side by side, right, and basically in Europe, you're able to go side by side with two different types of systems, and that you say the European Jewish system actually wound up being more successful. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want to clarify, because this gets mixed up by the alt-right and antifa, that they think Jews got rich because they were lying conniving, but that's nowhere near true. They actually had, they left their own devices. They have a work ethic, which is part of the Jewish tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, and they did better than their other European counterparts, being filled with regulated kingships and all that.
Well, let me be clear. I'm not an alt-righter. So
I know. I just wanted to.
No worries. No,
I know. I just want to.
And I'm not going to say that that Jews or any other ethnic background have a monopoly on hard work or ethics or anything else. I'm sure there are great people and bad people of every ilk. But what I'm talking about is the system itself, and I think this I like. I like the idea of saying that when it was heavily regulated and people were forced to work, that
Yeah.
it didn't work as well, right? People only gave what they thought the boss would keep the boss happy and no more. When you have a less regular system, people are actually trying to do what is right. But there's something else here, right? When it comes to the feudalistic system, there is an obvious boss, an obvious second class, an obvious third class, and a almost slave, almost like a serf, maybe not really slave, but like a serf community. But when you go to a more freer community, people are able to move up and down and around. And not just that, since you don't have the strict rules, culture begins to matter. Reputation begins to matter. You know, is this guy a crook? Has he screwed over someone else? Has he not screwed over someone else? That matters a whole lot more. And the incentive is for me, as a general rule, is to not lie, to not screw people over, because my reputation will suffer and no one will want to do business with me. But if it's feudal system, no matter what, I'm the duke or the baron or the lord, and no matter what, I'm the serf. It doesn't really matter if I'm a good serf or a liar or not. It's irrelevant. I think the system is the key aspect here, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay, yeah, because when you get later on in history with free cities and all, people going to or forming the free cities, that's where capitalism began to rise and actual progress that was at a standstill for thousands of years.
No, I agree completely. I think the city-states are a good example of how well that worked. Thank you so much for that, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Awesome. All right. I think the next person I want to jump on, we're staying in a business field here if I could, and I'm going to get outside of New York finally. I'm going to head over to North Carolina, and I'm going to talk to Dean about business licensing. Dean, are you there?
Yes.
Dean, what's going on, my friend?
How are you, sir? I'm actually, my name's Dean Davis, and I'm from the Virginia 5th Congressional District, chair actually in Virginia. I was actually
chair of
going
what?
to talk about the Libertarian Party of Virginia, the 5th District.
Awesome.
I'm actually going to be running for chair for Virginia coming up next year, but
well, good
you're
luck.
talking about licensing, and thank you. The licensing thing is very interesting. I'm also a volunteer firefighter and EMS. You know what the number one killer of volunteerism is?
No, tell me.
The length of time to become an EMT or a firefighter is 160 hours plus.
It's a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and people can't take that time away. The other thing is it's becoming national registry. So now what's going on is instead of taking your state's test, which was actually, you would get a regular test with questions, they give this national registry test, which has 3 correct answers or 4 correct answers, and you have to pick the best correct answer. So they have a fail rate of over like 60 to 70%, and they make money every time that you retest.
Well, isn't the argument here, and tell me if I'm wrong here, this is an area that I'm not very well versed in, so I might be completely off here. Isn't the argument, hey, this is life or death. We can't have some guy or gal who doesn't know what she's doing because she's going to wind up, killing somebody. Isn't that the argument?
Yes. I mean, I believe there should be some level of, you have to have a training level, and I think it should be left back to the states, not a federal thing, which is where it's going now, where you have to take this test called the National Registry.
Oh, I see your point. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Okay, got it.
Making money on these people with the fail rate of 60 to 70% every time people take the test.
Yeah, no, I got you completely. And you would think that, again, localities should be able to decide what they feel is appropriate for the EMTs, particularly if it is, volunteer. And there are several reasons why.
Exactly.
There are going to be different issues that I deal with in the inner city than I am in a rural area or suburbia. There are going to be different issues and problems, right? And the example, I'll give it a most extreme example. There was an example. I had this is going to sound crazy. I had a dog in Japan. And when I came back from Japan, true story, I brought the dog. When I brought the dog back, the guy looked at the dog's medical records and said, "Oh my God, this thing, I would never know what this thing is. I can't believe it." He goes, "How do you get this?" And I said, "By eating a specific type of frog." And he said, oh, yeah, I think I would have never been able to diagnose this. Why? Because where I was in Japan is where this type of frog was, and my dog ate that frog. And if you eat that frog, you get a specific type of virus from eating that type of frog. So how in the world would some guy in New York where that frog doesn't exist ever be able to diagnose this? Never in a million years. But if you live in that area of Japan, you probably diagnose it once a week because dogs sometimes eat frogs. That's how that happens.
Exactly.
So the local vet is going to know the local problem. I had an anthropology teacher. My degree's in anthropology. I had an anthropology teacher years ago when I was in college, 30 years ago now, who said one of the best things to do if you're in an undeveloped country is to not wait to go back when you get sick, to not wait to go back to your doctor at home. Would you feel comfortable? Go to the local doctor because whatever you got is probably local. The local doctor sees this every week. They know better. I think this is an amazing thing you've brought up also. God, such a great night with such good callers. Thank you for this. This is exactly correct. This is one of the things I talk about always. Localization, right? The EMT, the volunteer firefighter who's supporting a local community, the local people know what the problem is. They know what they're dealing with. They should be having the local tests to decide, right? If you're in a place, for an example, that, you're in a rural area where there's not one house over, 2 stories because they're all farms and flat houses and ranches, why the hell do you care about ladders? You're in New York City, you better know every single thing about elevators. You better know every single thing about elevators, and you better know every single thing about fire escapes. Because this city's filled with fire escapes and elevators all over the place, right? But if you're not here, why do you care? No, I completely agree that the value of localism is important. But here's the worst part. I think what happened was 2 things. Number 1, I think people saw it as a money grab.
Yep.
Right? And then someone had to say, hey, we need a someone who produces a test, and they can produce more tests for cheaper if they do one test for the entire state. Oh, if they do one test for the entire country. And who's paying for it? Well, not the government, the individual. So you're now punishing, not only you stifling volunteerism, you're actually punishing it. And you're making it less effective.
It's hard to come by volunteers anymore, and a lot of it's because of not being able to pass this test.
Yeah.
The state test isn't as hard as the national one. They made it that way. Every time you have to retest is $80.
Yeah, but my point is, I don't care how hard the test is. I care how effective the test is. Right?
Yeah,
that's what I care about.
There to pass you.
Yeah. Is it giving the person, or showing the person has the appropriate skill level that's appropriate for that community? But not just that. You shouldn't assume that when some volunteer shows up that they know everything. I would hope that there are more senior volunteers there who will take them and train them and mentor them until they become the tip-top volunteer. I think that's how most volunteer organizations run. So you shouldn't have to be a certified, professional, awesome guy who knows everything when you first walk in the door. You're a volunteer. The fact that you care, that you want to volunteer just for no money, should have a whole lot of value. If you pay attention to what I say this often. If someone's in trouble, you have a problem, physical problem, monetary problem, emotional problem, any medical problem, whatever that problem is, the first thing you need, number 1 thing, somebody who cares. If you get that person who cares first, you'll then get other things that matter to solve your problem. So when people are volunteering, why in the world are we hammering them? I completely agree. I think your point's a valid one. I think localization here is the key. Unless you're trying to become a volunteer for the entire state of Virginia or the entire state of New York, in which case it could be a statewide test. I get that. But if you're becoming one for your local community should decide. And they should be the ones who help train you and figure things out, right? I mean, that's the most important piece.
Absolutely.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All righty. Yeah, so, he's talking about this same idea of, when people want to step up, we should be helping them, right? If you want people who are, again, we're talking about poverty, right? People who are in bad spots, when you give them, and I'll go right to volunteerism for this. When you give them a program, you have a problem. Here's the idea of a program, right? I run a program, and I got a bunch of employees. And what's my job as a government employee and program is to serve the poor, right? That's my job. I got to serve the poor people, give them benefits, whatever those benefits are, whatever those services are. Insert service or benefit. So if I give 1,000 people the service every week, I'm doing my job. Well done, Larry. I've given them the service. I tell my people, keep giving the service. That's our job. We serve the poor. Keep giving them the service. Insert service here. So now next week we give out, 1,100 people. I go, well done, good job, right? I tell my bosses, we're doing great. We're now servicing 1,100 people. Life is great. Life is good. Awesome. Then we're doing 1,200. Look at us go, 1,200. You got to give us raises. You've got to give us more people. You got to give us more stuff. And all of a sudden now we're growing and growing and growing. And these guys want to get promoted. They want raises. We can't do that if we don't service more people. So we're servicing more people. Who's being helped? Who's getting out of poverty? Nobody. The system is set to keep you being serviced. Not just that. Now, if you come to my guys and my guys get in front of you and you've got paperwork that's not really good paperwork and may not be all that good, what happens? They go, fine. Yes. Checkbox. Because they start coming to me saying, hey, boss, I couldn't get 1,100 people this week. I only got 900. And I go, why? Well, the paperwork was wrong. These guys had this wrong or they didn't qualify, whatever. I go, dude, we're supposed to be doing 1,100 every single week. What are you doing? And they go, okay. And they start closing their eyes. And you say, well, they're bad people. No, they're humans who are responding to a system that rewards them for certain activities, so they will do those activities. That's what it is. It's a system. Brian was talking about the system, right? 2 different systems. People responded to 2 different systems. Same thing here. But go to a nonprofit. Particularly one, and this goes back to the other gentleman who talked today, they have grants, right? That does not get in government grants. Go to a nonprofit that helps people that does not get government grants, that instead has a donor base, right? That people give money to. What do they always do when you go to any commercial for them, any gala for them, any event for them? They always do something. They pull out someone who is a success story. See, look, this is Bob, this is Jane. They got better. They got off of the dole. They started businesses. They got college degrees. They got jobs. Insert thing here, right? Whatever is the goal of that nonprofit. They keep showing successes. Why? Because you're not going to write that check if they're not having successes. You go, you guys suck. I'm not going to give you a check if you don't get anybody out of poverty. But if you actually get people out of poverty and you personally care about that, you write them a check. You go, yes, this is something I care about. But boom, here you go. You give them money. Nonprofits, volunteers, right, which we were just talking about, volunteers, they do what they do not because they want to service people. They do it because they want to help people. And there's a difference. Serving them keeps them in poverty. Helping them gets them out of poverty. I want to help them. I want to shift more into volunteerism, more into nonprofit. And what will happen? You will have more people actually being helped instead of just being serviced. I want people to be pulled out of poverty. I want them to step up and have that second chance. And the more we allow nonprofits to be in doing that, volunteers, exactly to his point, the more we do that, the better off we're going to be. All right, so did you like what we're talking about again? I'm asking you it again. Head on over, support this show. Head on over to patreon.com/Sharpe Way. Give what you can give. If you like it, support it. And if you do it right, guess what? You get a cool cup or you get a cool shirt like this. You can get the goodies if you want to. Please go ahead, make that happen. Patreon.com/Sharpe Way. Give what you can give so I can keep doing this. And if you also want some swag, no worries. Sharpeway.com. Click swag, support us, and we can keep this going. Alrighty. Also be part of the program. Sorry, I've been remiss. If you want to be part of the program, 573-427-5463. Hopefully I can get through everything, but we'll see. I want to grab another person. I'm heading back to New York yet again, which is great. I love it. In West New York, I want to grab someone who wants to talk about open borders. Okay, I don't know if that's popular, but maybe we'll see. That's Jeff. Jeff, how are you, my friend?
Hello.
Jeff, talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had questions for Larry. I said I wanted to talk about.
This is
open
Larry.
borders.
Go ahead. You are live, my friend.
Oh my God, Larry! Larry, I had the pleasure of meeting you a couple times last year, and voted for you for governor. I think you made a fine
Thank
governor.
you.
But the thing that's keeping me from joining the Libertarian Party full bore.
I'm losing you a little bit. Can you get into a better place?
I'm gonna try to.
Perfect. Now I got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, what's keeping libertarian is the national perspective and things like open borders, free trade, international free trade, national defense, and I just don't agree with what I've heard from like on a national basis.
Yeah, let me give you two things to consider. Number one, those things, while important, are probably a whole lot less important to you daily. They're probably a whole lot less important to you daily. So I always go by the 80-20 rule. And that is, if I agree with what you're saying, 80% of what you're saying and 20% I disagree, you're still my ally. You and I can still have conversations. You and I can still chat. And I might even still vote for you. Because I want to make sure you get at least 80%. So that's the first thing I want you to consider when you're making those decisions. But it's the second thing. Please look at the individual people in the party also. You are correct. The national stance is open borders, and there are many libertarians who open borders. But if you've ever heard me speak, I am not one of them. Right? I did not talk about open borders. That wasn't my thing. I didn't talk about it at all. And that makes some libertarians think I'm not pure enough. And I get it. But there are lots of libertarians who don't agree on everything. There are people who agree with the national platform and don't. So I'd ask you to do two things. Number one, think about the 80-20 rule and see if that 80% is more important to you than it isn't. Now, don't get me wrong. For some people, particularly if you live in a border state, open borders might be number one for you. I get that. If you live in Arizona or California, Texas, that might be the number one issue for you. And I get it if that's where you are and you believe that. I could see that as being a very big issue for you. For most people, though, who don't live on the border, should open borders really be the number one issue? And it's up to you. I don't have an answer for that, right? I would assume if you're a New Yorker, probably not your number one issue because I open borders with Canada. And I think we're okay with that as a general rule. So
I'm not too far from the border.
Yes, I think it's probably not that big of a deal in general to us. But to be fair with you, I'm not an open borders guy. If you remember what I talked about, the thing about open borders, it's very similar to many other issues. Open borders and immigration, actually, no one wants to solve the problem. I mentioned this on Joe Rogan, and he kind of thought I was joking. He's like, nah, they want to solve it. I'm like, no, they don't. Because it is a very much of a wedge issue. It really is.
Oh, gotcha.
It's a huge wedge issue. And here's the issue. If you go back 10 years ago, and those of you who've been around a bit will remember, 10 years ago, Democrats wanted to build a wall, and Republicans said it was too expensive. Now, Republicans want to build a wall, and Democrats say it's too expensive. It isn't the issue. It's a wedge issue. Now, I already have that. Have you heard my plan for the border?
I don't think I have lately.
Then let me tell you, because this is the issue. It's not a black and white issue. We can have a secure border and we can have vibrant immigration. We can have both. I want vibrant immigration. If you heard me talking about farmers earlier in the show, the farmer was talking about the idea of how, if we don't do the right thing, farmers are going out of their way to bring in illegal immigrants. Right? Actually, I can't say illegal immigrants in New York State anymore. If you say it in New York City now, it's a crime. So I'm sorry. Undocumented workers. I'm not even joking. If you yell illegal immigrant to people in New York City, you can go to jail. You can get like a fine. It's bad. So anyway, that's considered hate crime in New York City. I'm not joking, by the way, guys. So undocumented workers. So they're bringing undocumented workers. They're doing it. I get it. So here's the actual answer. How about instead of us building a wall or not, or, open borders or build a wall, how about instead we build 2 Ellis Islands on the border, maybe one in Texas, maybe one in California, or whatever's appropriate, so that if people want to come to our country, they go to the Ellis Islands. They just walk into the Ellis Islands. What do? We can control them there. We can look and say, okay, does the person have a disease? Are they in trouble? Are they a cartel guy? Are they insert thing here? assuming they pass, right? We make it a nice Ellis Island area. As soon as they pass whatever tests that we feel appropriate. By the way, I'm not an expert in this, so I would allow, our Border Patrol to start thinking about what the right answers are. Immigration people to start talking about what are the appropriate tests to take, right? Whatever those things are, right? You set that system up. If they pass, they get a temporary work visa. They don't get a green card. They don't get citizenship. A temporary work visa, and they can now go to whatever state they're going to work in. If a state wants to opt out, I don't want any immigrants. You can opt out. Fine. Opt out if you want to. I think it's silly if you do, but fine. State wants to opt out, they can. But instead, that person now goes to that state, and they can work there. Awesome. Now, DACA had some problems, but it had two very good things. And the first one is, in the DACA plan, you couldn't get any form of welfare. That's amazing. No public assistance. Let's keep that as a rule. If you have a temporary work visa, you are allowed to work and you may not get any public assistance. The second thing that DACA had that was great was a 2-year check-in. So you get to check in every 2 years, right? So you check in every 2 years. So we check them in every 2 years. We check them out. Do they are they getting public assistance? They are? Gone. Right? Do they not check in? Go get them? Gone. But do they check in? Are they not on public assistance? Awesome. They're paying taxes and not getting public assistance. They're basically paying to work here. I'm okay with that plan. Let's do that. That's great. But I'm still not done. There are, give or take, 10 million undocumented workers right now in this country, give or take, depending upon how you count those people, right? Now, we don't have the ability, the money, the time, the human resources to actually get out there and to get those people. Not going to happen. Can't be done. Not just that. We can't even get the bad guys, because when we go to get the bad guys, and out of those 10 million, there are some bad guys in there too. Most of them, I think, are great people who's trying to work. I got it. But there are bad guys there too. I don't want to act like they're all amazing. People, there's a bad group of people in every group, and there are bad guys in that group of people. But we can't get them because they live in enclaves where when you go there, they're blackmailing everybody, and no one will tell us where they are. It's almost impossible for law enforcement to do it without massive sweeps, which is why we do massive sweeps. And we hurt people that we shouldn't be hurting. So instead, now here's what happens. Once we have the Ellis Islands, you'll find that people will start to go. Most will not. But out of those 10 million, let's say only 500,000, less of 5%, they go. 5% go to get their work visas. They go. They get it. They come back. Now they go back to their enclave and go, you know what? I don't care if there's a problem. Evil Pablo can't blackmail me because I'm legal. I'll call the cops on him. I'm good now, right? I'm paying taxes. I don't mind. I can do whatever I want because I'm paying taxes. I'm legal now. And the rest of the people look at him and go, wait a minute. Evil Pablo can't blackmail you anymore? What? They didn't deport you? No, they gave me this cool thing I got. I can now work. I got to pay taxes, but it's fine. Boom, they all start going. And eventually, over time, they'll all begin to go. This may take several years, but eventually, as they're doing it, more people in the enclaves become legal. So now when law enforcement says, we're looking for Evil Pablo, they go, he's right there. There he is. Go get him. He can't blackmail me anymore. Get him. And now we can get the bad guys, which right now we can't get, but we'll be able to get them. It might take 2-3 years before they believe us, trust us, and stop pointing out the bad guys, but boom, they stop pointing them out. All those guys, those human traffickers, all those guys who are the drug lords, boom, they start getting them and they start sending them all out. We can actually get them. And I said, but Larry, what about this every 2-year thing? What about citizenship? And what about green cards? No worries. If they're checking in every 2 years, we can then decide what is the appropriate way to get them to green card. Is it a test every 2 years? Does it take 2 years or 4 years or 10 years or whatever's appropriate? Again, I'm not an expert in this issue. We can find people who can come up with the right ideas until people who can move towards green card or move towards citizenship, whatever is the appropriate answer. But the reality of it is there are many workers who don't want green card. They just want to be able to work. Many of them don't want citizenship, right? I know many people who live in New York City who worked for 10, 20 years in New York City. They're from another country. They're proud of that country. They want to stay a citizen. And they're probably going to go back and retire one day. Good for them. And there's lots of people who want that. I don't mind. Pay your taxes. Don't take public assistance. When you're ready, goodbye. I'm glad you came. Life is good. Now you might say, but wait a minute, Larry. There's another problem. What about the bad guys coming across the border? There are still going to be bad guys coming across the border. That's true. But now what do? We now focus all our current energy, no extra money, no extra border patrol, just on those areas to get the bad guys. Whole different issue. Now the only people coming across the border are going to be the bad guys. Now, I don't want anybody starving or dying of thirst in the desert. But if I got to pick between families or bad guys, I'm going to take bad guys, right? The families go to the Ellis Island. The bad guys, they die of thirst, in the woods. But not just that. If they know they can go to Ellis Island, there'll be less bad guys because a lot of those bad guys are using mules or are human trafficking. You don't have to do it anymore. You don't got to pay the coyote because you can just walk to the Ellis Island. It changes the entire dynamic. But not just that. How do you pay for the Ellis Island? Great. I don't even have to make it a government agency. They can be private agencies. Well, Larry, how can you do that? I'll tell you how. It's the recruitment model. There are literally recruiting companies who make tons of money providing workers. Why can't a different recruiting company take over each of those so they actually have to compete against each other? So people will go to the better ones. They have to get better. They'll make money on recruiting. Well, Larry, who would pay for that? Right now, we're paying for it. There are literally farmers right now throughout the entire country spending money in the black market to get workers. Not just that, the hotel industry paying money on the black market to get workers. Of course they are. Not just that, the nanny industry. People say, well, we want to stop immigration. No, we don't. Business wants all those workers. That's why they're never going to solve this problem. Hospitality industry wants it. Farming industry wants it. Nanny industry wants it. They all want it. Cleaning industry wants it. They all want these workers. So we're going to get them. So how about, I have an idea. How about they pay us to do it? We don't pay one extra taxpayer dollar to make this happen. This absolutely can work, make us safer. We can secure our borders and still have very vibrant, open, safe immigration for everybody. Now you might say, but Larry, you're the only one who thought of this? You're a genius. I am a genius. But I'm not the only guy who can think of this. Lots of people can. They don't want to solve it. It is a very good wedge issue, and it worked for you. That issue, open borders, put a wedge between you and the Libertarian Party. And I'm asking you...
There's another thing too, Larry, though.
Please tell me.
The other issue I wanted to talk about was, international free trade and the whole tariff issue and so on. I work for a small manufacturing company here in Western New York, and I personally experienced getting counterfeit raw material from China.
Yep.
The Chinese they'd taken Charlotte Pipe, Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Chinese government has allowed a company there to take the Charlotte Pipe trademark, and they're making pipe and pipe fittings, and the pipe fittings are only made with about 2/3 to 3/4 the amount of material of the real thing, the real deal. They're using the complete trademark, they're marketing it as this, and some of that stuff is making it into this country, and they're selling it all over the Pacific Rim. I mean, you can't have free trade when you don't have people playing fair.
No, don't get me wrong. I completely agree. Let's cover two different issues. First one, tariffs are bad. That's not the right answer to this problem. Your problem that you're talking about is a real problem. I'm agreeing with you completely. I've seen it. I have customers who do business in China, and they have seen horrible practices. Horrible. Yes, everything you said, I've seen more than once. Correct. But how are tariffs going to fix that? Tariffs feel good, like I'll get them, but that's not actually the answer. If anything, maybe you lower tariffs to other people to make it easier for them to trade with us, to make the Chinese feel worse. If anything, but just adding tariffs doesn't make it work. You can begin to sue the Chinese companies. You can begin to, to punish them. You can tell what you just said. Sadly, most people don't know. Most people don't know.
Exactly.
If you actually use the bully pulpit to express how bad this is, you would have people not doing this. They would go, oh, wait a minute. Wait, you're a Chinese company? Are you doing this stuff that, Larry Sharpe talked about? Are you doing this? You would have people bring this up. And what winds up happening is at one point, people stop going to China or China gets better. And the example I think you'll find of this is what happened in Japan in the 60s and 70s. There was a similar situation. If you remember, I don't know if you were around that time, but in the 60s and the 70s, Japan was famous for cheap, cheesy products. And then by the time the 80s and 90s came, people were like, man, Japan makes some good stuff.
Yeah, they were.
Yes. That's what began to happen. In fact, if you go by the cars, look at how, and the reverse happened here in America, right? You look at the cars that were made in the 90s. I mean, America had some really bad cars in the 90s. 80s too, had some really bad cars. And America had to turn around too to make better cars. All this had to begin to happen. I think this is simply a public education issue that is going to have to change. Because eventually people are going to say, China doesn't make good stuff. China makes just cheap garbage. I don't want cheap garbage unless I want cheap garbage, right? Am I buying, for example, plastic paper plates or whatever, that kind of paper plates or plastic plates? Maybe I don't care. Maybe cheap is fine and whatever. I don't care if it's a name brand. Perhaps. Depends upon your business model or what you're doing. But when you're building something that has actual value, that matters, that people might get hurt if it's wrong or bad, yeah, you're probably going to care. And eventually China's going to want to get a piece of that.
That's where these plumbing materials come into play. I mean, they've been selling ductile iron pipe that doesn't meet the strength requirements. Like I said, the plastic fittings that we got were only about 2/3 the wall thickness, so they didn't have the full pressure rating. But they wore the trademark of an American company.
Yes. If you remember, there is actually I think it's a Netflix special. It might be Amazon Prime, but I think it's Netflix. It's one of those services. They do a special on a Chinese factory in Ohio. And it covers a lot of this type of stuff. How these guys, they're failing because no one's buying their product because their product keeps breaking. Right? They're making glass in this special. They're making glass. And as they keep making glass, it keeps failing and breaking. So then the Americans then go over to China and say, well, let me go see how the Chinese are doing it. And maybe we're doing something wrong, right? That's their answer. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Let's go. And when they go there, they see there's like no safety. People work 6 days a week. They don't see their family. I mean, it's brutal, right? They see the brutality of how it is in China right now. Now, when more people see that, we will change how we deal with this, right? We will put the pressure on those people to make changes. All I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you. Tariffs feel good, but are they going to change the Chinese? I don't think so. What will change the Chinese? Companies like yours going, you guys suck. We're going to go to Vietnam instead. Or you guys suck. We're going to go to some other company instead. That's going to change, right?
Well,
if we do that.
All I can say is, fortunately for us, the way the market has changed, we were able to bring back from China a lot of the gray iron castings we buy, and we're resourcing those back in Pennsylvania where they were originally.
Nice. Look, exactly. See, look, this is actually working. That's my point. When people realize it begins to change. That's the issue, right? The tariff feels good and sounds good because I'll go back to what I talk about all the time. Government, by default, is force. And force is sometimes valuable and important to use, particularly if someone's rights are being violated, if someone's property or life is being violated. I don't have a problem using force when there's a victim. I get that. But when it comes to a cultural change, once you just throw law at it, there are always unintended consequences. It feels good up front, but it doesn't actually work in the long run. And what would happen...
There you go.
Yes, I want what's happening, what you're telling me to happen, to keep happening. Because I have a feeling that the people in Pennsylvania actually care about what's happening in New York. They actually want to keep that customer. They're not looking for just the next one. The Chinese are, right? The people who are working in China right now for your company probably are like, well, we'll grab the next guy. Or we'll change and we'll now sell to whatever, Africa or Asia or Europe or something. But those Pennsylvania companies, I bet they're like, thank you for coming back. We're gonna do right by you. We understand the culture.
I'll tell you what, Larry.
Right.
Like I said, I still don't know about the whole National Libertarian Party, but so far as New York concerned, I just love you, and you got my vote if you run again.
There we go, my friend. I appreciate that. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, great talking to you.
Have a good one. All right, guys, do you want to talk to me? You can. It is very simple to talk to me. All you do is dial 573-427-5463. Give a buzz. I'm happy to chat about whatever you want. That's why I do this show. If you notice, about every 3 or 4 shows, I don't have a guest. It's just me and you. That's on purpose so I can keep this going. I want to now move, if I could, to the idea of culture we talked about. Talk about culture. And the culture I'm bringing is a culture of poverty. And there are a lot of people who literally have this culture of poverty. I remember years ago, I used to sell Hondas. Yes, I was a car salesman. I know, terrible, right? I was actually a car. I was, absolutely. And as a car salesman, I remember something. People who are from a lower socioeconomic status, when they would come in, they would ask one important thing. What's the monthly note? That's all they cared about. How much were they paying per month? They didn't care about the price of the car or what the insurance was or, what the rate was for the loan. None of that mattered. It was just, can I pay the monthly note? If they came from a higher socioeconomic strata, they often would ask things like, what's the percentage? How's this working? What's the rate? All these things they'd ask. What is it better to lease? What's the advantages? All these types of things. A culture of poverty often is looking just for, as I talked about earlier, the rental monthly note. That's it. Not just that. Years ago, I used to sell Craftmatic beds. Years ago. And when I did that, being homes. And I used to get upset when I would go to a poorer neighborhood. I'd be like, I'm going to a poor neighborhood. They can't afford these beds. The beds are expensive. And, right? I felt that way, right? And I had a mentor there who didn't even know that he was a mentor to me. His name was Mo, and he said, Larry, look, first off, don't judge people by their home. You have no idea who they are. You have no idea how much money they have. Don't judge them, right? You never know. The person who lives in a big house could be broke. The person who lives in a bad house could have money. You don't know. So don't judge, number one. And he was right. It's like, you know what? I shouldn't be judging. It's true. And he was right. And I learned a lot from that concept. But that wasn't all. He said something else. He goes, the poor person might buy it anyway. And I said, why? They're poor. He said, if they come from a poor culture, their head is in that space, their mindset is in the space where they're never going to buy anything big, they're never going to own a house, they're never going to own a car, they might look at this as, look, why not? I'll spend some money, make myself feel good, and I'll buy a cool bed. And I thought, that can't be real, no, I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't really believe it. And then I went out and I stopped judging. As he said, don't judge. I didn't. And when I went out and I stopped judging, all of a sudden I saw there were people who were wealthy who wouldn't buy the bed or would buy the bed, people who were poor who would literally go into their bathroom and pull out $3,000 in cash and give it to me. Just like that. Boom. This mindset is tough. You might go, Larry, you're being kind of mean. I'm not. I come from it. I was, as many of you know, I said before, raised in the South Bronx. I had a father who had exactly that type of thought process too. Same thing. My father would say, we had, believe it or not, we actually had a Lincoln Continental in the South Bronx. If you know, in the 70s, that was the cool car. The thick white wall tires out front. Couldn't drive it. Why? Had no money to put gas in it. But man, did we have a cool car. Still living in a bad neighborhood, wouldn't move out because we had to be cool and do that. This is a mindset that we have to change. We have to make sure the mindset is we have ownership of our life and we take care of it. It can't be something like this. You know what? I can't get a job because nobody's hiring. You know how many times I've heard that? What person who's successful has ever thought of that? Well, they're not hiring, so I can't get a job. Someone who's successful thinks, they're not hiring, what am I doing wrong? They're not hiring, maybe I should move. They're not hiring, what value do I produce? That's a mindset change we have to work on. And a lot of that is how we talk to people, how we talk to ourselves, and the examples that we set. Oh, imagine, if you would. I remember I was talking to somebody, I forgot who I was talking to, but I said, I want you to imagine something. The person who you are now. Imagine if you had never seen anyone in your family go off and go to work because they were always on some form of public assistance. But not just that, you never saw your grandparents go off and go to work. Neither of them. Mom, dad, grandpa, they were all on public assistance. If you have an environment, a culture of that, where that's where you come from, why would you be thinking there's something greater or better for you? Maybe you would, and some people do. But if it was you, if you're listening to this, watching this right now, think all of a sudden, if you're that person, you never saw your mom or your dad go off to work. Never. You never saw your grandma or your grandpa go off to work. you would be a different person. I don't know who you'd be, but you would be a different person. This is a cultural issue we have to break. We simply have to. So it's ownership of housing, ownership of your business, ownership of your job, ownership of your life. This is the way we break poverty. It doesn't take 5 minutes. It takes years. We've been fighting a war on poverty with the bad way for 60 years. Try mine for 15 and watch things change. All right, I want to grab a couple calls. I'm back up on the calls. I think I'm going to grab someone from outside of New York State. Someone was talking about homelessness. All right, why don't I grab a guy who wants to talk about homelessness? This is actually, I have Eric. Eric, my friend, how are you? Go ahead.
Hello?
Eric, yes, this is Larry. What's going on, my friend?
Appreciate it, being on the show. I was going to ask you about something that I think is kind of interesting from a libertarian perspective, which is chronic homelessness is often associated with mental illness and drug abuse, and kind of like one causes the other, and they go back and forth. And people, they're in this terrible mindset where they can't get out of.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, as a libertarian, how do you attack that? Because you're talking about somebody that's really in a terrible state of mind.
No, you are, again, wow, this is such an amazing show. Maybe I'm going to stop having guests. You guys are great. Anyway, so you're totally correct. It's a big deal, right? And the reason why I know this more is because, as you probably know, since you're calling about this, there's a higher percentage of veterans who are homeless than non-veterans. It's a huge problem in the veteran community. And one of the reasons, there are many of them, but one of the reasons is vets are more apt to have PTSD and TBI. And on top of that, they're more apt to feel alienated and more apt to feel not part of the community. So they alienate themselves, they isolate themselves. You're totally correct. What winds up happening is once someone's been on the streets or homeless for a certain number of years, generally somewhere between 1 and 3 years, depending upon the individual and their environment, at one point they don't want to have homes anymore. You're totally right. They have this. They feel like this is their lifestyle now. They feel comfortable in this environment. And that sounds, to someone who hasn't been homeless, it sounds insane. But it's absolutely true for someone who is insane or not insane. And mental illness is a big part of that. You're correct. I see it in New York City all the time. We see lots of people who are homeless. Many of them have mental illness, and it's obvious. They're violent or angry, or they look, I'm not diagnosing, but they look almost schizophrenic sometimes. Who knows if they actually are? Again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what it looks like to the outsider. You see that often, right? I completely agree. So how do you deal with that? It's going to sound crazy. It goes back to the piece, the guy who called about the firefighters. You actually go out of your way to encourage volunteerism and nonprofits. The most powerful solutions are not government solutions. All the government will do, and you know this if you've been part of this, all the government ever does is put them in shelters. And I'll give you the best example I can give you here in New York City. There's a group of people, I forgot who it was, but they actually had mobile showers. And if you know about the homeless community, one of the problems they have is tough to get on your feet when you can't wash, right? Right. That's a problem.
That's very true.
So they literally would have mobile, they'd park them in an area in New York City and open up and say, here, go take a shower. And they had people donated volunteer clothes donated. This is free. Not funded by the government whatsoever. Funded by private donors who wanted to solve this problem. And they knew that one of the biggest issues is let them be clean and then let them have clean clothes. And all of a sudden, what can they do? They can begin to interact with their local community again. Whether that's going back home to mom or dad and trying to get some help, whether that's getting a job interview, whatever that is, they can begin to, whether that's going to get psychiatric help, whatever that issue is, they can begin to do so. Well, when they started doing that, you know what New York City said? Oh, no, these are parking violations. And shut them down. I'm not joking. Government shut them down.
Wow.
Because what government will do is provide them with a shelter. And again, you know this. They don't want to go to shelters. For them, it's actually more dangerous for a homeless person in a shelter than on the street.
That was the biggest complaint out here.
Yes.
I live in the Phoenix metro area, and nobody wanted to go to the big shelter in downtown Phoenix because they said they felt unsafe.
It's correct, because that's not their environment. And we think we'll give them a shelter. They feel unsafe. That again goes back to our other issue I brought up earlier, which is what government does is service them. It doesn't help them. But nonprofits actually help. Giving someone who's homeless a shower, and a new set of clothes means that person has a shot at reintegrating into their community again, which is, as to your point, they need to be able to reintegrate. How do you do that when you haven't showered in 6 weeks? How do you get a job?
Right.
How do you go back to your mom or dad or your friend or your cousin or your girlfriend or whomever you care about? You can't. Giving someone a shelter, you've just made them feel bad for a day. They would rather go back up in New York City. They'd rather go sleep in a subway again. You're completely correct. So the answer is, without question, allowing, facilitating, encouraging the nonprofit world to step in and solve this problem, and not regulating. This is what we do. We regulate the hell out of this. And there's another good example of this, right? In New York City, they throw out millions of tons of food every day. Millions of tons. There are people who want to come by and collect it and give it to people who are hungry. But no, because it hasn't been inspected. I'm not joking. So it's okay once they throw it out in the garbage. For now, a homeless person to go into the garbage, root through it and eat it. That's fine. But they can't just give it to a shelter or to a nonprofit because it hasn't been inspected. That's New York City.
Right.
That's how the best thing we can do, get out of the way, let the nonprofit world step in. There are people whose loved ones are homeless. I know this personally. There are people I know who've been homeless. We want to help them. I personally have trained people to get them back into the world and teach them how to network and do interviewing skills because they don't know how to get back into the world. And I do it for free. Why? Because I care. Because what will matter more than anything is them being able to interview well to get a job. How they're going to cover the fact they've been homeless for 2 years on a resume. That's what matters. So to answer your question, it goes back to the volunteer piece. Get government out of the way. Let the nonprofit work. In fact, encourage them. Ask for help and encourage them to move forward. Nonprofits care. Government just services.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All righty. Have a good one. I am actually going to, if I can, stay in Arizona. I was in Arizona just there. I'm going to stay in Arizona for some time. I did a lot of New York. I'm going to go in Arizona if I can. I'm going to talk to someone about isolationism. I'm chatting with Rodney. Rodney, how are you?
Very good.
What's going on, my friend?
So my question for you, sir, is this. We're seeing a heavy trend of isolationist sympathies growing not just in the Republican Party, but in the Democratic Party, and in particular the Libertarian Party. Are you concerned about this growing trend of paleo-conservative, Robert Taft, Lindbergh, American First, isolationism that is growing and becoming much more popular? And I in particular see it with so-called libertarians who are cheering Tulsi Gabbard's growing isolationist policies and saying, oh, that's great, but she is very much an American firster of the Charles Lindbergh, type.
All right. 3 things. One, I think you are correct that there is definitely a growing isolationism. But 2, it's not in the Libertarian Party. That's not true. Is it people who call themselves libertarian? Yes, that's true. Is it actual libertarians? No. The Libertarian Party is not about isolationism at all or about American firsters. That's not true. And there's a difference between a big L libertarian and small L libertarian. For those of you who don't know, big L is someone who's a member of the party, who may be running, who may be an activist with a big L. It is actually very rare to find a big L libertarian who's an isolationist. It's very rare to find them. It's very rare to find the big L libertarian who's an America firster even. That's rare. But when you find hardcore Republicans, you will find some of them who call themselves libertarians who will say that. That's true. I just want to make that distinction. And the last piece is, I think it's unfair to link Tulsi Gabbard to Charles Lindbergh. I do think that Tulsi does care about the foreign wars. I think she does, but I think that's a bit, in my eyes, that's a bridge too far in my eyes. I see where you went. I think that's a bridge too far. So let me cover all 3 of those. Libertarian Party itself.
Well, can I just comment real quick? I don't think it's fair because she openly has said, oh, well, Assad's not a great guy, but, you can't deal with that. I mean, Charles Lindbergh was saying the same thing about fascist Italy, imperialist Japan, and Nazi Germany, saying that's none of our concern when people were dying.
Yes. Oh, okay. In that regard. Okay. Yes. I feel like Lindbergh was far more of a sympathizer for those people versus a non-interventionalist. But maybe I'm off on that. So, well, let me cover all those things. The first one is the Republicans talk about isolationism. Libertarians talk not about isolationism. They talk about non-interventionalism. They're two separate things. Isolation say, we just leave these people alone. Let's throw up tariffs. Let's build a wall. To hell with Europe. To hell with all these people. That's isolationism. The vast majority of libertarians do not believe that. The vast majority of libertarians are about, let's trade with everybody. Most of them are like, free trade with the world. We're more than the average, American. Far more. Most of them are like, open all the borders. Most of them are exactly the opposite. There's very few libertarians, big L libertarians, who are actually isolationists. They're non-interventionalist, which means they don't want to be bombing people or fighting other people's civil wars. Now, in that case, Tulsi Gabbard actually isn't libertarian enough. Tulsi Gabbard is about stopping the regime change wars. But I don't think she wants to get rid of NATO or get any of those things. Almost all libertarians don't want to be fighting regime change wars. But in fact, the vast majority of libertarians, again, I'm talking big L libertarians, are completely against war in general. They don't want to stop bombing people at all. To your point about, but people are dying. People are dying all over the world. And it is not, I don't want to send, look, I'm a veteran. I was a Marine for 7 years. And to this day, I'm over 50 now. To this day, if the Chinese come across the border, I don't know how they would do it, but if the Chinese came across the border and were invading New York, you know what? I'll suit up and I will leave my legs in the streets of Manhattan if that's what it comes down to it, voluntarily. But why in the hell would I leave my legs in the streets of Baghdad because people are dying? Or the streets of Kabul because the people are dying? Let Afghanis leave their legs in the streets of their towns. Let the Iraqis leave their legs in their streets of their towns. That makes me non-interventionalist. It doesn't make me isolationist. I'm not going to get in. I'm not prepared to put Marines, and I'm a Marine, so I say this. I'm not prepared to put Marines in Syria because they're just going to die for nothing. Marines will sacrifice their lives. I know I would have done so in a heartbeat. I probably still would. But they want to sacrifice their lives for America, not for Iraq, not for Afghanistan. Let Afghanis sacrifice their lives for their own nation. It is, but they're dying. Then it's their issue to change, not ours. I'm not supporting any bad dictator. I'm not supporting them, but I'm not prepared to drop bombs on them. I'm not prepared to send Marines to die for them. So when it comes to that, I'm on board, man. I am all about not dropping bombs on people who haven't done anything to us. If they're not coming across the border, I hope that you can solve your own problems. I hope you can do it peacefully. I really do. And as an American, if I'm an American official, if I can support a peaceful resolution in some way, I'm in. You want to bring the people over to America to have a conversation, talk about peace? I'm in. You want me to help trading with? I'm in. Let's do this. You want us to help with whatever? I'm in. You want us to bomb one side because you think your side is right? No. It's your civil war. And here's the biggest issue, that the hypocrisy of it all. We had a civil war. We did. No one intervened in our civil war. We had to, for us to become the country that we're going to become, whatever that future is, we had to go through a revolutionary war and we had to go through a civil war. Now, our revolution, our birth of our nation was through violence. And Canada was not. Both are the right answer. We chose our route. Canada chose their route. Both are correct because Canada should decide its own way and America decided its own way. Ours was through war. Theirs wasn't. We also had a civil war, and it was bloody and horrible and nasty, and that was required for us to do it. We don't let the Middle East have their civil wars. We intervene before they finish the civil war, which means the civil war never ends. They have to decide when they're going to end their civil war. Some of them will have deep civil wars. Some of them won't. And all of those are the right answer for those countries. If they think civil war is the answer to fix their problems, that's their issue, not mine. That does not make me an isolationist. That makes me a non-interventionalist. We have ensured that the Middle East stays in civil war for 60 years. and their civil war should have been over 50 years ago. And the example I can give you is Vietnam. Vietnam's the best example. Vietnam went through a civil war. We got involved. When we got involved, 2 million more people there died, to include 58,000 Americans, and an entire generation was destroyed for us to do what? Nothing. Vietnam is now our trading partner. Literally, that was a complete and total waste, and all they told us was, if Vietnam falls, it's the domino effect. The entire world collapses. Everybody becomes, communist. It was all a lie, and so are all these regime change wars. They're all a lie. Whatever happens, it will happen, and they'll all go away. I'm sorry. I talked forever. I apologize, my friend. Please.
No, it's fine. I disagree with you, but I respect your opinion. I would just comment real quick on the Vietnam thing. I've spoken with a lot of former South Vietnamese soldiers, and they say that, they would pick up arms to go back and free their country if they could. But thank you again for your words. I appreciate it.
No worries. And you know what? If the Vietnamese people believe that their government is bad or wrong and not right for them, they have every right to overthrow it, either through peaceful methods or violent. I mean, we said that in our declaration, right? We're okay with that. So I think they are too. It's up to them. If enough Vietnamese think their government's bad, they should either do it through peaceful means or through violent means, whatever they think is right. I'm not here to judge the Vietnamese government. I'm not Vietnamese. But I'm also not here to judge the rebels that they may have. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. All right. I hope that was clear, guys. I want to make sure that that's one of the reasons why I'll bring this up and link it to poverty. Because since Vietnam, for sure, what do you find a huge chunk of people who join the military? Right? It's a volunteer military now, not a draft anymore. The vast majority of people who join the military are poor. Vast majority. Not all. Obviously not all. But a majority are. They don't have money for college, don't have a future in their mind. They take off and join the military. I did. I was 17 when I joined the Marines. I had no chance of really going to college. I didn't have any money for it. I didn't have a desire for it. So I joined the Marine Corps. And what would have happened if they had sent me over to fight some war and I would have, had TBI or PTSD like some of my friends did who went over? For what? Think of all the people who fought and died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what do we have now in Afghanistan? Taliban. Nothing has changed. We still have a Taliban in Iraq. Same thing. For what? What are we there? 15 years, 18 years now? And we still have Taliban? We still have ISIS and Al Qaeda, and Syria and Iraq are a disaster. For what? Why did all those 7,000 of my brothers and sisters died for that? No. I'm not okay with that. And I'm not anti-Tulsi Gabbard, by the way. I'm not at all. Right? When it comes to Democrats, Tulsi's the best one they got. Hands down, best one they got. And if she wants to come aboard, I'm happy having her here. I'm the biggest tent libertarian you are going to find. Bring them all in. Happy to have them all. Let's talk to them, and let's make them even more libertarian. All right. I want to go back to New York again. I'm going to go back to, I want to take another call if I can. And I got a lot of libertarians calling me tonight, which I love it. Thank you, libertarians. It's awesome. You can call all you want. Happy to have you. Non-libertarians, you can call too. But I want to go back to New York if I can, going all the way out, believe it or not, to one of the most western parts of New York. I was just there in Jamestown. Rory, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Talk to me, my friend.
Well, I don't want to say it's a consternation, but I have kind of a concern, and I just wondered how it was in other parts of the state.
Okay.
Many of the candidates on our libertarian slate are not libertarians. They're Republicans who didn't win the nomination.
Yep.
Or they're Republicans or Democrats who are just using us as another line.
Yep.
And it kind of bothers me because I left the Republican Party because I wasn't getting represented.
Yep.
And now I'm almost forced to vote for the people that I could have stayed in there and voted for.
It's a very valid issue, and I want to see if I could make this a bit easier for you to swallow if it's at all possible. The first thing is, yes, it's true, but it's only for this year. Next year, it's because of the way New York State election law is written. What you have to remember is New York State election law is written for puppet parties. That's what it's written for. It's written for small parties to basically use the Democrats, Republicans for that reason. That's what it's written for. That's why when we became a party, That's why it became so easy for this to happen. But it's only for this one time. As of next year, I think is it February? I've forgotten what time. I think it's February. But as of next year, for you to be a libertarian candidate, you have to actually be enrolled as a libertarian.
Good.
So it's
Good.
only short term, so I hope it's easier for you to swallow. But there's a second piece here.
Well, it is.
I'm actually kind of okay with it. And this goes back to earlier in the program. I talked about localism. I want local libertarians to decide which people they want to start bringing into the party. And my hope is, and this is one good thing, you're right. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that there's, 6 people who, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Cattaraugus County that has 14 people running libertarian. 3 are cross-endorsed or former Democrats. 3 are cross-endorsed or former Republicans. 8 are actually libertarians. The advantage of this is, once they run, we will see what they do after the election, won't we?
Mm-hmm.
If they rush back to their party, lesson learned. Done. Have a nice day, right? Their party will notice that too, right? But what if they don't?
Yep.
What if they go, you know what? No, this is right. I'm okay with this, right? And I was just talking about how I'll take anybody into the party to talk, right? I'm happy to bring Tulsi Gabbard aboard. Because why? Not because I want her to run the party, not at all. But because if we bring them in, then we will talk with them. And the more we talk with them, the more I believe, and maybe I have to, but I do believe, the more libertarian they'll become. I think that we influence people when they start to hear us. When they start talking, going, oh, they're not crazy, right? When they see a difference between the other gentleman who called in saying, libertarians want isolationism, right? There are people who call themselves libertarians who do believe that. But actual libertarians, very few actually believe that. And when they come talk to us, they get that and go, oh, that's not who you are. So I believe that as we bring those non-libertarians in, some are going to run back. I think you're right. And there'll be a wasted vote for us. I think that's true. But with that, I think some of them are going to go, wow, this really is my home. I should have been here the whole time. And they had to dip their toe in because they were afraid. And then once they saw it, they thought, you know what? This is where I belong. So I hope I'm right. You might be right. And this might be a disaster. But I have to trust the local people more than me because they know better than I do. And I hope that in the long run, we'll actually wind up collecting some real talent that's really libertarian.
Well, my understanding is that our mayoral candidate, I saw him 2 or 3 days before you came down to speak for him, and he told me that this past Monday he was switching his registration from GOP to Libertarian.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that's the case, just because I was going to vote for him anyway, but I like the idea of voting for him in my party, not their party.
I agree completely. And look, I met the guy. He seemed to be a smart, savvy guy. I gave him some real good libertarian ideas. He absorbed them. So either he's a very good actor, which is possible, or he actually saw some value in the party. And me going out there, and those of you who aren't paying attention, I'm traveling the whole state still, and I'm doing press conferences with people, and I'm helping people out, and I'm showing them that, we are a party that will support each other. And I'm hoping that that's going to get them to go, you know what? If I stay libertarian, people will support me. I will have a support structure. People will vote for me. This is where I want to be. And I hope he's that guy. He seemed it. I hope I wasn't fooled. But is it possible?
Well,
yeah, maybe.
His history is that he doesn't just go along to get along. He bucks the system. He asks the uncomfortable questions, and he makes the votes based on what he thinks is right and wrong and what's in the city charter.
And he also wears a very cool hat.
Oh, yes, he does. He's a very nappy dresser.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I appreciate it. You've given me a little bit of hope here.
Yes. No. I'm being forward. This isn't a perfect system at all, but I think we have to take advantage of the best that we can take advantage of. And I think that in the long run, we're going to gain some talent. I think we will. The Libertarian Party is small, and we lack talent. And I think we're going to gain some talent by letting as many people in as we can. And some of them are going to leave. I get it. We're not going to keep them all, but we will keep some of them.
Well, a little bit of rain on the crops is better than none, so I'll take what we can get.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you
for
the call.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to be part of this program, please don't forget, you can just give me a buzz. 573-427-5463. If you like what I'm doing here, you want to be part of this, you like it, then support it right now. Head over to patreon.com/sharpeway and throw me a couple bucks. Now, do it. Help me out. You like it? You want me to keep doing it? Let's go. Get more people on this. Share this. I think this is a great way for us to think that everyone who runs for office should be able to connect with the people out there, have a direct conversation, see what they're feeling, understand who they are, and not think they're above anybody, right? We can have a conversation. This is critical. All right. I want to grab another call if I can. I'm going out of New York again, which is great. I love when I go out to New York. Thank you guys out to New York for actually doing this. I'm going to grab someone from Missouri. I'm sorry. Did he drop? Okay. Sorry. We lost Ben. Ben, I think, wanted to talk about UBI. So I'm happy to bring up UBI. People often bring this up. Let me cover this real fast if I could. Let me cover my last piece on poverty. Then I'll go to UBI, which also deals with poverty. And this show was heavily about poverty, but of course I take whatever you guys want to talk about. The last piece about I want to bring up on poverty is the war on drugs. The war on drugs may not seem like it has anything to do with poverty, but boy, it does. The war on drugs creates an environment of no second chance. And once you have no second chance, then there's no risk you can take. And if you can't take risk, you can't start a business. You can't buy a house. You can't try a new job. And you wind up having hopelessness, which is actually learned helplessness. The war on drugs beats up people who do not have means. Because if you have means, you can fight the war on drugs. If you have means, you can stop people from harassing you, right? If the war on drugs encourages law enforcement to take cash and take goods, the wealthy don't carry cash. Who carries cash? Immigrant communities who don't trust banks. Who carries cash? People who have small businesses who take cash, who don't trust banks or don't have banks or don't have bank accounts. Who carries cash? People who cash their checks because they have bad credit, so they cash their check at check cashing places and have cash in their hands. That's what happens. This is a problem with the war on drugs. It punishes the poor far more than the wealthy. And once it punishes them, it ensures that not only are they punished, but there's no second chance because now they have a record. And I know this. My mom was a felon. She went through this. I saw this happen with her. And it's the number one reason why I became an entrepreneur. My mom, once she was a felon, had trouble getting a job. Not only that, when she had a job, she felt like she was a hostage. I couldn't stand it either. So what did I do? We started our own business. And when I started the business, my mom was 100% owner. Not me. My mom was an owner. Why? If my mom is the owner, she can't be fired. No more hostage from my mom. How many people think of that? They don't. This goes back to the idea of ownership. The war on drugs crushes people's chance at growing. It puts them back in the black market again, which puts them back in jail again. And it, without question, hammers the poor far more than the well-off. There are several issues with poverty we have to end. Get people to have ownership in their houses. Get people to have ownership in their businesses. Get people to have ownership in their jobs. Get people to have an ownership culture. And end the war on drugs. All right. Looks like Ben is back on the line. I want to thank Ben for getting back on the line. I'm going to talk to him. I think he wanted to talk about UBI, which kind of deals with poverty. So, Ben, how are you, my friend? Oh, hold on. Is Ben there? Hold on. Ben, are you there?
Hey, Larry, you there?
Hey, awesome. Yes, you're back. Talk to me, my friend.
Awesome. Hey. Yeah, sorry about that. Got lost connection. But first, I just wanted to congratulate you on your run, working your tail off for the Liberty Movement. Definitely appreciate you. I ran for Congress here in Missouri twice, and I know the toll it takes on you, so I definitely appreciate you taking this call.
You ran for Congress twice?
Yeah, down here in Missouri, had a great time doing it, and I've been to the state convention several times. I was down in Orlando. I was one of the dudes carrying around your banner.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Thank you.
So I'm a big fan of yours. Watched your whole race in New York, and I know how hard it is to work, to do what you're doing, and appreciate you.
Absolutely, thank you, my friend.
Just wanted to call you because I've had this idea basically that's been brewing in my head, and I call the UBI this green fungus that kind of keeps growing on me.
Okay.
And it's not a libertarian idea. I do not argue it as a libertarian idea. I gave the same speech to the state convention in Missouri. And it really, my problem that I see with us libertarians is we don't have much of a transition plan. And what I love that you're having a show and that you're open to these ideas, whether it's putting billboards and stuff on bridges or whatever. You're always open to these ideas. And libertarians don't seem to have a toolkit or a means to get where we want to go. And the left has been planning this stuff for hundreds of years. We're going to slowly socialize this, then this, then this. And it's like, so what are we doing? Do we have a plan? And so for me, what my question to you is, would you think the UBI, not claiming it's a libertarian idea, not claiming that it's morally right, as I'm a pragmatic big L libertarian trying to get as much freedom as I can in my lifetime, do you think it would be a decent tool to get off of the state? I mean, you'd be able to.
Yeah, no. I get you. Let me cover both parts. There's three parts to this.
Sure,
one is the idea of UBI. The other is the idea of right now Yang's UBI, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so there's two different types of UBIs. So let me cover those two. All right. Well, and let me give you the transition piece. The transition, this is what you see. Almost all of my policies that I brought up and I continue to bring up tend to be very similar to one thing, and that is I don't abolish much at all. If you notice what all my plans do is I simply create another option to break government monopoly. And then I allow the consumer to choose. And what winds up happening is one of two things. One, the government option gets better for the poor, which I'm okay with. It has to get better or more effective, or it becomes obsolete. Both are a win.
Yep. Absolutely.
That is my transition plan. And almost everything I say, that's the transition.
So would you be interested in that idea? Because I just describe it as a giant voucher system. Like, get it off of the government, use the UBI as a giant voucher system, and then someday we can eliminate that UBI when we see fit.
Well,
so
there are there's some worries on both of those things, right? One of the most interesting ideas that came up with it, I happened to be on, if you happen to see my show from 2 weeks ago, I had Mike Tolkien on. Mike Tolkien has the idea of basically replacing all public assistance with some type of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So now it's not.
Yeah,
I'm not giving out
just a different vehicle.
Yeah, but it's a concept of just now it's all cryptocurrency. So now that means you're able to control it and put it in the right areas, and it makes the public assistance. The concept is it makes public assistance another option to go that route, and it keeps it keeps control of it. So maybe that's an answer. I don't know, but I'm open to that concept. But let me move to both UBIs, Yang's and then UBI in general. UBI in general. I'm sorry, to cover that first. UBI in general. I get the idea behind it. I do. You get rid of all other forms of public assistance. There's no more welfare. There's no more food stamps. There's nothing. Everyone gets X dollars. In this case, it's a large amount. It's like $3,000 or $4,000 a year, whatever the poverty line is, right? It's a poverty line amount of money.
$13K a year. It's much higher than that.
Say it again.
It's 10 or 13K a year would be the poverty line. So it's a big chunk of change.
It would be a big chunk.
Swapping our government for that. Absolutely.
Correct. If we did that, it would be something like probably $30,000 or $40,000 a year. Would be my assumption in that area, something like that, to where someone could actually survive on UBI. Right. That's the goal. Then in that case, there's no school vouchers. There's nothing. That's all you get.
No public schools.
That's all you get.
Absolutely.
There's your money. Right? Go and do it, right? And I think without question, the logic of it saying we would save money, absolutely. We could dump half administration in the federal government, state government overnight. Overnight, half administrators are gone. Overnight. I completely agree. That concept makes sense. The problem is, here's how it works in reality. There is no way all those people are going to lose their jobs. They're not. That's not going to happen. The next thing is, the second that goes into play, I guarantee you there's going to be someone who says, yeah, he gets $3,000 a month, but see, I have 4 children, so I should get $3,100. Or I'm a disabled veteran, so I should get $3,200. Or I did this, so I should get that. And enough people show up, Congress people who want to get elected will absolutely do that. Without question. They'll go, yeah, you're
I've got
right.
a bit of a counter to that.
But I'm saying that's what happens. So it'll start to become extra this or extra that. That's the first issue that I'm concerned about.
100% agree. And there was an article in Alaska where the last governor just promised a $6,000 Alaska Sun check. Of course, they have kind of a UBI in Alaska, as you know.
Yep.
And the first governor, if I know the story correctly, the UBI check basically got cut by $1,000 because they were investing in something else in their state. Well, that governor ended up losing the election and the next candidate promised $6,000.
Absolutely.
Well, now you have a $6,000 receipt, and now that governor that's offering $6,000 is having to cut all these other departments in order to pay that $6,000.
Absolutely.
So I think to me, it's just so ingenious of an idea. It's not libertarian. I don't.
But hold on, I'm not even done.
Agree to be hijacked.
But let's assume that we have the most virtuous Congress in the world. I'm laughing. I can't even say that. But let's assume for a second that we do, and they actually don't, go to, because you're disabled, I want disabled vote, so I get this, or the grandma vote, or the people who are too tall or too short vote. Insert thing here, right? I don't want that vote, so I'm not going to ask for the extra $100 here or there, or whatever that is, or whatever stipend is appropriate. I'm not going to do that. So let's assume that's to be the case. But then still, the next thing comes. I was talking about the culture earlier, if you were listening. The idea of not seeing or watching your mother or father ever go to work. Not watching your grandfather, grandpa, uncle ever going to work. I don't know, you personally, but let me be clear. If you had never seen your mother or father get up and go to work, if you had never seen your grandma and grandpa get up and go to work, you would be a different person. When we have UBI,
100% agree.
Yes, it is a bad cultural move for us. And I brought this up before. There was a movie, Ready Player One, came out I think last year or 2 years ago.
Yes, I think that's the future, my friend.
That's
by default.
Bingo. Bingo. You create UBI.
That's the future.
Everyone stays home and plays virtual games all day. And now what you will have is you will literally be creating a sheep class of people. And then you will have certain people who want more. Their entire job will be going to get the UBI of everybody else. And their job is for you to shut up, stay in your house, and give me your $3,000 so I can take care of you.
Right. And I agree for the most part on that, but we have that same effect happening now. Half of my family is kind of a welfare family, a widowed uncle, that kind of stuff, and they are doing the exact same thing where they didn't see their parents work.
Absolutely.
And I would 100% agree with you there. And so that's why I propose it as a transitionary plan. This is not a solve everything. This is we're trying to basically put the government in a rock and a hard place. That is the same idea.
I would ask you, can you please give me one example of a government program that started and then stopped?
That I would 100% agree with.
Thank you. So why would I think that would ever happen?
Well, because I think we need an entire revolution anyway. So you would have to have something in that revolution. We would have to get Congress. We'd have to get governor. We could never do it with just Larry Sharpe as governor. You need the New York House. You need the Assembly. So you have to have a plan, and you have to have a group of people. And by the time libertarians are even in that position to win, because as you know very well, most people are not libertarians. It takes a little bit of talking to. Most people are statists. As a big L libertarian who's pragmatic, I'm reaching across the aisle saying, hey, here's something that, I'm not just going to cut your Social Security that you paid into your whole life. Let's transition from a UBI. Then I can change it from there. I just think it's a more honest and thing to say than saying, hey, we're just going to cut everything.
I'll give you another answer instead. I'll give you another answer instead.
Sure.
How about instead, I create an environment to where people don't want to be on public assistance because I've made it easier for them to get a job, to start a business, to make money. And then as people get off of it, by default, people will have to start firing and losing administrators. You go to UBI, I'm not joking. Literally 1/3 of the government workforce is out of business overnight. Do you think so? The government is I think it's what is it like Walmart and then United States government or something like that? I forgot what it is. I mean, but it's like
right.
it's 1 in 7 Americans works for the government.
So we would have to, in a way, say outright, we would have to buy off the population that's voting to outvote the people that are in the government.
Boo.
I'm not bailing anything. Exactly. I'm not bailing anything. I'm an old school Rothbardian, but this idea has been getting me. I mean, if you get, Keynesianism in the Fed, right? So I'm an econ major. The whole goal of the Fed is to push out the demand curve, try to people to use their savings.
Okay,
in order to
hold on. But look at where you're going with this. I can't believe you're even going there. I'm going to tell you a quick story. And this last piece here, I was literally, this is a true story. My day job, I train people, right? I'm a trainer. So I'm training people at a department, one of the departments here in New York City. And this is a room filled with educated, smart professionals. And during one of the breaks, I never bring up politics except during the break if someone brings it up. Someone brings it up, hey, Larry, hey, I'm so glad the Fed existed. It saved us during the crash. And what I said was, do you guys know the Fed is a private bank? All of them said, no, it's not true, not true. This is a room filled, 20 some odd professionals, educated people said no. And I said, Google it. And they Googled it and like, oh my God, he's right. This is where we are.
All right.
And you're talking about what you're talking about? Come on, man. We're nowhere near.
I think you shouldn't discredit that because you could end the Fed by pushing that demand curve out by constantly having it pushed out with the UBI.
You end the Fed by auditing the Fed because we can't audit the Fed. And when people figure that out, they'll start looking at it and going, what? We can't audit the Fed? Wait a minute. It's not part of the government. What? And all of a sudden people will understand what the Fed is.
I think we have to hit economists in the heart, and we have to talk about demand and supply curves to the economists when it comes to the Fed. And the UBI meets that. It's a constant push out of the demand curve in which consumption can never fall to zero.
I've just lost half my audience thanks to you. I've just lost half my audience.
I appreciate you, Larry Sharpe.
All right, my friend.
With you. So
thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Have a great night. All right, guys, if you like what I'm doing here, you got to support me. Patreon.com/SharpeWay. Do the right thing. You like this. Pay for it. Be good. I'm here. Our time is up. I'm sorry I asked people on the phone. I apologize to people I couldn't get to. Call in next week, please. I'll be back here again next week. I will see you next week, 8 p.m. right here on the Sharpe Way.